Some days in Foxborough do not feel like an announcement. They feel like a door shutting inside a negotiation room. A.J. Brown is already a Patriot, but the part that really matters is how it happened. Philadelphia wanted a first-round pick. New England tried to hold on to 2027, and the deal landed in that calculated middle ground with 2028. That is a plan, not an impulse. Hit the like button if you want the real backroom read, because today is about the price, the next move, roster risk, and Drake Maye living with star-level pressure. What Ian Rapoport put on the table completely changes the way you read this deal. A lot of people see the trade and only see the headline. The Patriots gave up a first-round pick for A.J. Brown. Done. End of story. But real backroom conversation is not built only on the headline. It lives in the resistance that comes before the handshake. Philadelphia walked in wanting a first-rounder. Of course they did. When you have a receiver with that kind of weight, that kind of resume, that kind of physical presence, that production history, and the ability to change the shape of a defense, you do not start the conversation small. On the other side, New England tried to handle it with control. The package the Patriots wanted to push was a 2027 second-round pick, and that tells you this franchise did not walk into the room begging. They were interested, absolutely. They were aggressive, absolutely. But they were trying to protect their most immediate ammunition. So the final solution is where the front office detail really shows itself. A 2028 first-rounder, not a 2027 first-rounder, along with a 2027 fifth. That might seem small from the outside, but when you are building a roster, 1 year changes a whole lot. New England keeps its main pick in the next cycle, protects part of its own plan, and still walks out of that room with the kind of receiver this fan base has been begging for years. And I will defend the Patriots on this without apologizing. This is the move of a team that understands exactly where its quarterback is. Drake Maye cannot spend another season carrying the same exhausting conversation about not having a dominant target. Enough with this offense living on promise, adjustment, and hoping the perfect fit somehow appears. Brown arrives as a true number one. The coordinator can call plays knowing he has somebody who can win through contact, pull coverage, and punish any defense that tries to mess around with single coverage. Is the price high? Of course it is. Nobody is taking A.J. Brown out of Philadelphia for pocket change, but there is a massive difference between paying big and paying big without a plan. Based on Rapoport's report, New England gave in on the label of the pick, but won on the timeline. That is the kind of detail that separates desperation from execution. And the most interesting part is this. When a team makes that kind of move on offense, it also tells you it does not want to wait around for the roster to mature on its own. And if Foxborough is now in acceleration mode, the next question naturally comes from the other side of the ball. If the offense got the hammer, the defense might be waiting for the next hit on the table. Alex Barth brought up a name that makes sense precisely because it is not a comfortable idea. Kayvon Thibodeaux. This is not some cute off-season suggestion just to fill space. It is an idea with friction, cost, contract questions, roster reading, and a very Patriots-style logic if you really sit with it. New England already brought in Dre'Mont Jones, expects to have Harold Landry healthy to begin the year, and added Gabe Hakes through the draft. That improves the group, no question. But improving is not the same thing as scaring people. In the AFC, especially after making a major investment in A.J. Brown to speed things up for Drake Maye, the defense needs a matching answer too. You do not build a more dangerous offense and leave the pass rush living off a friendly rotation. Comfortable opposing quarterbacks ruin every pretty plan. The backroom side gets interesting because Thibodeaux may be sitting in that strange place in New York. Too talented to be treated like a throwaway, but maybe too squeezed inside the Giants' build. Brian Burns is the veteran anchor. The team has invested heavily in young edge rushers. Thibodeaux is heading into a fifth-year option season with real money attached, and suddenly the question is no longer only about football. It becomes planning. It becomes priority. It becomes who that organization actually wants to pay when the bill comes due. That is where Kayshon Boutte enters as a possible piece in the conversation. After Brown's arrival, the Patriots have more receiver depth than they had before, and Boutte is entering the final year of his deal. If he really sees fewer targets, fewer snaps, and a smaller path to earning his next contract in New England, it is natural for the market to view him differently. And the Giants, with Malik Neighbors' health still leaving questions in the room, and with movement inside their receiver group, could be exactly the kind of team willing to take that bet. I am not going to pretend Thibodeaux comes without risk. He flashed with 11.5 sacks in his second year, but the production after that did not carry the same impact. But that is where a serious coaching staff comes into the picture. Sometimes talent does not need 1,000 speeches. It needs fit, role, accountability, and an environment that knows how to unlock that first step. If New England could turn a crowded offensive piece into a 25-year-old edge rusher with first-round pedigree, that would be more than opportunism. That would be Foxborough treating this roster like a live chessboard. And that board, inevitably, puts Boutte right in the middle of the next conversation. Boutte is where this story stops being only exciting and starts feeling uncomfortable. Everybody celebrates when AJ Brown walks in. Everybody understands the size of that upgrade. But inside an NFL building, every major arrival pushes somebody into a smaller chair. And with Kayshon Boutte, that smaller chair may not make sense for the player or for the Patriots. The part that hits hard is that Boutte did not become expendable because he lacks talent. It is the opposite. He grew, earned a role, answered on the field, and became one of those draft hits fans appreciate because absolutely nothing was handed to him. He had to build his space. He had to prove he deserved targets, trust, and a place in this offensive plan. In a normal offseason, Stefon Diggs leaving could have opened the door for him to take on even more responsibility. But the situation stopped being normal the moment Brown walked into that locker room. From that point on, the math changes. Brown is going to take volume, attention, and play design. Romeo Doubs also arrives as a relevant piece. Mac Hollins, Demario Douglas, Kyle Williams, and other names are still battling for space. So the real question is not whether Boutte can play. He can. The question is whether New England is going to give him the kind of role a receiver in the final year of his contract needs to build his own future. That is where the backroom part becomes real. If Boutte has not been around the building much during voluntary work, that alone does not decide anything. But when you combine that with an expiring contract, Brown's arrival, and trade market noise, the silence begins to carry weight. Sometimes an absence does not scream. It simply makes the whole room feel different. For the Patriots, there is a cold read here. If the plan is not to extend Boutte, maybe it is better to turn that value into something right now, whether that means draft capital or even help at another position of need. For Boutte, there is logic too in finding a place where he can play more, see more targets, and build his next contract without being buried behind a star. But I will admit it, this one stings a little bit. Boutte represents the kind of development this franchise needs to hit on. You do not want to find a player, build him up, and then watch it all leave before the peak arrives. But contending forces hard choices, and Brown's arrival speeds those choices up. Patriots Nation, I want to read your take in the comments. Would you keep Boutte even with Brown taking the top spot in the hierarchy, or would you use that piece right now to strengthen another part of this roster? And now we reach the point nobody inside Foxborough can avoid. AJ Brown does not arrive only to help Drake Maye. He arrives to take excuses off the table. That is not a shot at Maye. It is exactly the opposite. It is recognition of how high he has already climbed. The 2025 leap was ridiculous. A 72% completion rate, 8.9 yards per attempt, leadership of a 14-3 team, and a real MVP conversation. For a second-year quarterback, that is not normal growth. That is the franchise finding its center after years of searching for a new face of the offense. But there is a difference between surprising the league and proving your power when everybody is already waiting for you. In 2025, New England ran straight through a lot of narratives. In 2026, opponents are going to walk in ready to hunt this team. The schedule includes trips to Seattle, Kansas City, and Chicago. Games where the stadium, the pass rush, the situational pressure, and the pre-snap reads will test every piece of Maye's maturity. And now he has a receiver who demands the ball because he knows his own value. That is the fascinating side of Brown. He makes life easier for the quarterback, but he also turns up the volume in the room. If a read gets missed, if the ball comes out late, if the offensive plan leaves the number one option isolated for too long, Brown is not the kind of star who disappears into the corner and accepts being decoration. And honestly, that could be great for Maye. Great quarterbacks do not grow only through comfort. They grow with a higher standard around them, with demanding players, with Sundays where the play has to come out on time because the target already won his route. The reward, if Maye answers, is massive. His fifth-year option arrives in the spring of 2027, and if he stacks another elite season with Brown, Doubs, a steadier line, and Josh McDaniels keeping the same system, the conversation stops being only, the Patriots have their quarterback of the future. It becomes, what does it cost to pay a quarterback who can take New England back to the top right now? Coming up short in the Super Bowl should already be enough fuel, but this rebuilt roster adds another layer. Foxborough is telling Maye it believes in him enough to buy a star, protect the offense, and speed up the window. Now his job is to command all of it without regressing, without hiding, and without letting that pressure turn into noise. Because when a team gives its quarterback this kind of weapon, the internal message is simple. Play like a star, lead like a star, win like a star. I walk away from this day with a firm read. The Patriots are no longer managing patience. they are managing consequence. I see Brown as an expensive bet, yes, but also as proof that Foxborough is done leaving Drake Maye waiting for real help. I look at Thibodeaux and see a possible next door. I look at Boutte and see a difficult dilemma, the kind a strong roster forces you to face. And with Maye, my standard is simple. Now it is time to command. If you want to follow this read with me every day, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications.